Hi everyone, welcome back to Ukulele Next Steps with me, Matt Stead. In today's video, we're going to have a look at two-part harmony. We're going to explore what it is, how it came about, and how you can use it. And then we're going to work out a really simple piece of music. And I'm going to teach you how you can make your own two-part harmony arrangements. Let's check it out. So let's talk a bit about what harmony is first of all. Think of music as having three main components: melody, rhythm and harmony. So melody is when we play notes one at a time, whether they be sung la 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 or played on the ukulele or any other instrument. Rhythm is how long we play each of those notes for, the feel and timing of a piece. Now, harmony is when we play more than one note at the same time. And of course, almost every time we play the ukulele, we're using harmony, because every time you strum a chord, you're playing harmony, because we're playing more than one note at the same time. In fact, take that example of an F chord. An F chord is made up of three notes: an F, an A, and a C. And when we strum all of those notes at the same time, we have an F chord. And you might think, well, there's four strings on our uke, so aren't we playing four notes? We actually just repeat the A, because when we play an F chord, we play an A here, and we also play one here. So in fact, we're playing two A's, an F and a C every time we strum an F chord. So when we strum that F chord, in effect, we're playing a three-part harmony, because we're playing, as I said, three notes: an F, two A's, but we count it as one, and a C. So every time you play an F chord, you're playing a three-part harmony. Interestingly, sometimes we use more than three parts. When you strum a C7 chord, you're using four-part harmony, because if we analyse it, we're playing a C, second string down, an E, a G on the top here, and a B flat note. So generally when you strum chords, you're using three, four or more part harmonies. What about a two-part harmony? What is that and how would we use it? Let's take a look. So a two-part harmony is exactly what it says on the tin really, isn't it? It's two notes played at the same time. So if, for instance, I was to play an F note and an A note at the same time, two notes played at the same time, a two-part harmony. In a minute, I'll talk to you in a little bit more detail about why we might use those. But that's all a two-part harmony is, two notes played at the same time. They tend to be from the same scale, because if you put a note from outside the scale together with one that's in a scale, it can sound a little bit discordant. It can be used in music, but generally we stay within a scale. The earliest two-part harmonies were the earliest harmonies, really, and they were used in the church, and the earliest two-part harmonies tended to be an octave. So if one person would be singing a low C, la, when choirs started using choir boys, they couldn't necessarily sing as low as the men, so they had to sing a high C. La, la. So the first harmonies came from the church and they were octave harmonies. One note and then another one a whole octave above. Two-part harmonies because it's still two notes, isn't it? A low one and a high one. Then people started realising that it sounded really lovely when you played a note consistently with another note from the scale, and it sounds really lovely. And that's how the next lot of two-part harmonies started to be used. One of the most common is a fifth part, so singing the first note of the scale, such as F, at the same time as the fifth note of a scale, a C. That might sound like this. Sounds nice, right? A really common one, and this was used loads by Simon and Garfunkel, is when you sing a note, for instance a C, and then your partner would sing a note a third below or a third above, and that's a really common way to do it. And that's what we're going to explore in just a minute. So why would we use 2-part harmonies when we can use 3 or 4-part harmonies? Well, think of yourself as a painter. Sometimes you might be doing a really technicolor painting with loads and loads of colours and it would be really beautiful. Sometimes you might be doing a pen and an ink drawing, which is just black and white or blue and white, whatever you want. Sometimes it has adds a bit of variety to your playing, to not always be using loads of colours, like the painting, but a couple of colours, say two tone. It's a really beautiful and interesting way of playing. Another time you might be using it dynamically. Say you're composing a piece of music and you want a kind of quiet section away from the chords, but you want it sounding a bit more sophisticated than just a melody playing on its own. So you might have something like, just to add a bit of variety and something really nice to your playing. So that's what we're going to explore, 2-part harmonies. We're going to create an arrangement using 2-part harmonies, taking one melody and adding another layer of melody, a harmony above or below it. So as I say, 2-part harmony really goes back for centuries. But if we look more recently at some pop artists, say Simon and Garfunkel, what they're doing is 2-part harmony. One of the singers is singing a melody and the other one tends to be singing either a third above or below them or a fifth above or below them, or some other form of melody. With Simon and Garfunkel, it's quite often a third. So Art Garfunkel might be singing the higher melody, something like this. Paul Simon might be singing a third below that. And when you put them together, you get this beautiful 2-part harmony. Let's take a look at how to actually do that then. So say we had a piece of music. This is a really simple melody. We've got Frere Jacka here. You might think, oh no, not a really simple tune. I want to do some more sophisticated pieces. This is just to explain how it works. If you can understand the process and it's easier to explain using a simple piece, then you can apply that to much more complicated music. So we're going to start with something simple today. So imagine this is Art Garfunkel's part, okay? And let's just play through this first line so you can get an idea of it. Frere Jacka, the notes are written above, F, G, A, F, F, G, A, F, and I've also tabbed them out to make it easier. If you've never looked at tab before, there'll be a link in the description to a video where it shows you how to play and understand tablature. So this first measure will sound something like this. Okay, I'm literally just going 1, 3, off on the A string, back to 1. Or F, G, A, F. And the next measure is exactly the same, right? F, G, A, F. So imagine that's Art Garfunkel's part. And we want to put Paul Simon's part in, for instance, a third below that. Let's have a look at the mechanics of it. I'm not going to do it on the F notes, and I'm not going to tell you why yet. So let's just have a look at the other notes in this part of the song first. So to play a note a third below, all we have to do is write out the relevant scale. And that's really important because you need to stick within the key or scale of the music from which you're playing. So this song is in the key of F and it's F major. So I've written out the F major scale along the top here. All you would do then is you would find whichever note you're going to add the harmony note to. So let's look at this A one first because it's a nice easy one to show you. So here's the A note in the scale here. To play a note a third below, we just count back a third. Now the important thing, this trips up loads of people, we're not really counting the gaps. We have to include the note from which we start from. So a third below an A is an F because we have 1, 2, 3. I have to count the A. I can't go 1, 2. I have to count that A. 1, 2, 3. So a third below an A is an F note. We know an F note because we've learnt that before, right? So if I wanted to turn that A note there into a 2-part harmony using a third below, because that's a nice way to do it, we would play an F note at the same time. So this bit here, see, this one here now has an F note, first finger of the E string, whilst you then play the A string open at the same time. And in terms of right hand technique, I'm not too fussed how you do this at the moment, but I'm just dragging my thumb down over the relevant strings, roughly where the body meets the neck. So can you hear that? We hear the sound of the original note, the A, and we also have a note that's a third below. A lovely two-part harmony. Now, incidentally, the reason I'm using my thumb to drag down and the reason I'm putting the harmony note a third below the melody is so that the last thing your ear hears physically and in terms of the notes is the melody note, the A. So I'll strike an F note and then the A note. And the A note is the one that your ear kind of remembers the most. So the melody comes out strongly. If I did it the other way around and I kind of played backwards, can you hear how the last note your ear hears is that F? So that would confuse the ear. We wouldn't hear the original melody coming out so strongly. So that's the reason I'm dragging my thumb down and I'm adding a harmony note that is a third below the melody. Let's try another one. Let's have a look at this G. So we need to go a third below a G note. Now we kind of run out of scale here, don't we? We kind of run out of notes. So we just go back to the end and count backwards. So a third below a G, remember we count the first note we start on. 1, 2, 3 is an E, okay? We could think of it as 1, 2, 3, an E here, couldn't we? But we just run out of whiteboard. So how can we play a G note at this third fret and an E note at the same time? Kind of run into trouble, haven't we? Because we normally play an E using the third string from our nose down open, don't we? The open E string. But you can't play that at the same time as playing this note because they're on the same string. So we have to find another place to play an E note. And this is really good for helping you to learn the fretboard as well. There's another place we can find an E note rather than this one. We can take the C string and we can play not the first fret, that'd be a C sharp. Not the second, that would be a D. Not the third, that'd be a D sharp. The fourth is an E. If you play that note, the fourth fret of the C string at the same time as the E string, same note, right? So we're going to add the fourth fret of the C string, and that will give us an E note. Let's write this one in here as well, so we've got the F. So to play that at the same time, to play this bit here, 4 and 3, by the way, if you're finding it hard to read the whiteboard on a small screen, there's a printable PDF of all of this, both the blank sheet that I started with and with the harmony notes written in the link under the description. So to play this harmony at the same time, I'm going to use my second finger, because it's how I find it easiest, on the 4th fret of the C string, and my first finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. If we pick both of those at the same time by dragging your thumb down over the middle 2 strings and stopping before you hit the A string, we have the sound of a G note and an E note. And because the melody note, the original one, is the G, that's the last one we hear. Again, that's all about teasing that melody note out. And it's as simple as that. So Simon and Garfunkel, when they're singing, Paul Simon is consciously singing a particular level, a particular interval below Art Garfunkel. Or it could be the other way around, Art Garfunkel thinking about singing a particular interval above Paul Simon. And we can do that with all the notes. Let's start to do that. Let's look at a few more. Remember, I'm leaving those F notes alone just for a minute longer. In fact, there's an easy peasy thing we can do because this measure is exactly the same as this measure. So we know we have the same thing here and here. Okay, so I'm just repeating. So what about those Fs? Why have I got you to leave those? Well, because they're based on the tonic, that just means the first note of the scale, they need special treatment. If I play a third below an F, which is a D, F, E, D. You can imagine I'm having to go backwards because I've run out of scale. 1, 2, 3. So a third below an F would be a D and an F like this. Here's the F note, here's the D below it. Now if I put that together with the rest of the song, it'll sound something like this. It sounds kind of okay, but it confuses the ear. It doesn't sound so much like Frere Jacques anymore. Now if I replace that D with another note every time I play an F, sounds more like Frere Jacques and a bit more satisfying, doesn't it? The problem is, when you play the D with the F, it suggests a chord other than the one that you'd be playing at that moment. If I was to strum the start of this song, the first two measures, I haven't written it down, so I'm just telling you, the first two measures are based on an F chord. So if I was strumming in singing Frere Jacques, Frere Jacques, Frere Jacques, it's based on the one chord, an F major, okay? Now, when we play a D and an F at the same time, it sounds too much like another form of chord. It sounds a bit like a B flat or a G minor 7 or a G7. That D and an F, they confuse the ear. Because this one chord is so important, the rest of them, not that bothered about, but this one chord is so important, I want it to sound like I'm playing an F chord. So what I do quite simply, and I do this in any piece of music where I really want to hear the sound of that one chord, I really want to hear the kind of the tonic, okay? What I do is I play another note from that chord. Now, it's starting to get a bit confusing, right? Don't stress this. When I did the start of the video, do you remember I told you that an F chord is based on the notes F, A and C? When we play an F chord, we're playing F, A twice and a C. So what I do for this one here, in fact every time there's an F in the song because it sounds good, I'm actually going to pair the F note with another note from that chord. And the one that I've chosen is the C. So every time I play an F, I'm going to pair it with a C harmony note rather than a third below it. Okay. I'm not going to go for a high C because then the last thing that I would hear would be the harmony and not the melody note. I'm going to go for a low C here. So that would look like this. 0 there, that's your low C, 0 there. So every time there's an F, I'm going to put that 0 in. Just for save a bit of time, I'm going to do it on every single F in the whole piece. So you can see it there. There's a couple hiding up here as well, isn't there? There we go. Now you can think of that note a couple of ways. You can think of it as a fourth below an F, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or I kind of like to think of it, and this always works with the tonic, when you get using that one chord, I think of it as a fifth above, so a fifth apart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, F to C. I know you'd expect that one to be higher, but we've just dropped it down an octave, okay? Don't sweat that if that's too much to think about. Just know that anytime you're playing the one note in a song, it's nice to pair that with a harmony note that's a fifth above or a fourth below rather than a third below. It just sounds more satisfying to our ears. So now look, we have the whole first line in two-part harmony. I'm just going to write in these C notes here as well so you can see the notes that we're harmonising with. Okay, so in effect we're playing an F and a C at the same time, a G and E at the same time, an A and an F and a C, and so on and so forth. Let's have a try at playing that. So grab your uke, let's have a go. Remember to play these, we're just going to drag our thumb down over the relevant strings, and the last note that you need to hit is the green one, which is the original melody. And that's why we've gone a third or a fifth below it, because we hear the melody coming out loud and clear because it's the last note we hit. So from the start, we're playing in 4/4 time, so these are all crotchets, all single beats. Don't stress that, just play them as I say them, okay? So we've got a 0 and a 1 on the middle two strings, open C and an F note here, and we're going to strum that at the same time. Now, important thing here, when I played that, it was a bit too slow and it sounded like too much like two individual notes. If I go too quick, it sounds a bit messy, so we want somewhere about there in the middle. Drag your thumb over. So you hear two notes, but they're so close together, they almost sound like one lovely harmony. The next one, we have 3 and 4. Well, we've come from here, so just move your index finger up to the 3rd fret, and your second finger will drop down here to the 4th fret of the C string. That gives you an E note and a G note. And we'll play those. There you go, your first two notes. Fantastic. Next up, we drop to the E and A string, and we've got an F note and an open A. Okay, it's easy peasy, isn't it? And then we keep our index finger where it is, and we're back to the middle two strings, C and F, the middle two open. So notice my index finger, it's quite neat, can stay on that E string the whole time. So from the top, 0, 1, move it up to the 3rd and add that 4th, 1 and 0 on the bottom two, and then keep it where it is and hit the middle two strings. And we do that again. We take it up to E and G, F and A, and back to C and F. Let's do the same to the second line down then. There are no F notes here, so we know we can just go a 3rd below each of these notes and it will sound really nice. So we already know that a 3rd below an A is an F because we've done it up here. So we're going to play an F note every time we play as A, and there's another one here. In fact, these two measures are exactly identical. The whole of Frere Jacques, you'll notice that all of the measures on the right-hand side are just the left-hand measure played twice. It's just repetition. What about a B flat then? A 3rd below a B flat note is 1, you count the B flat, remember? 1, 2, 3, G. And we can play a G on the 3rd fret of the E string at the same time as playing that B flat. Gives us 3 and 1. That will look like this. Okay. So I'm going to write in the notes that we're playing in the harmony here as well. F. Same over here because we have the same thing repeated. Then we've got one more to do. We've got a C note up here, the 3rd fret, a 3rd below a C. 1, 2, 3 is an A. Now again, we run into the same problem we had with playing a G and an E at the same time. We can't play a C here and an A on the same string at the same time. So we have to play the A right up at the 5th fret, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the E string. That gives an A note, same as the open A note. Okay, so we place our 3rd finger is the most comfortable way of doing it at the 5th fret of the E string, index finger 3rd fret of the A string, and at the same time that gives the sound of an A and a C. So I'm going to write in a 5 here and a 5 here, and let's write the name of the note that we're playing in there as well. Okay. So we have the fingering here ready made on our tablature, so let's try playing this second line. Look. We have F and A at the same time, 1 and 0 on the strings nearest the floor, the E and the A strings. Then we've got 3 and 1, 3 here, 1 here. And then notice it's that same shape, 2 higher at 5 and 3. So we have 1 and off, 3 and 1, and 5 and 3. I move my uke down so you can see. 1 and off, 3 and 1, 5 and 3. F and A, G and B flats, and A and C. Now, because this is a simple melody and we've gone up a level, haven't we, onto this next steps course, let's try and make this sound really lovely. What I like to do when I hit this A and C is just to put a very slight vibrato. You can play vibrato on 2 notes at the same time. You just have to wobble your hand left to right, very, very gently. The important thing to know is your fingers aren't moving left and right like that. Imagine they're rooted into the fretboard, or they're glued into the fretboard. It's your arm that has the wobble and your hands. Okay, so we could add a nice bit of vibrato, completely optional, on those notes, and it sounds really lovely. Let's try the whole of the first two lines together then. Come in with me after 4. 2, 3, 4. Isn't that lovely? Something very delicate and simple about it, but really beautiful, I think. Now, we've nearly finished the whole piece, believe it or not, because we've only got one more measure to do, because the next measure is exactly the same thing repeated. So all we're going to do is apply exactly the same principle. We're going to play a third below the melody note. And this is what I want you to take from this. A really easy way to play two-part harmonies and make them sound really attractive is to take the melody and play either a third above or below that melody. Remembering if the tonic note comes up, the first note in a scale, try playing a fifth above or below it, because it will sound a little bit more kind of comfortable on the ear. And remember, the reason I'm playing personally a third below the melody note is that then the melody note is the highest note of the two, so the melody comes through really clearly, which is a lovely way to do it. Let's apply that to the final measure then. So we've got a C note here. Now we already know that when we play this high C, we pair it with an A on the E string. So let's do that. So that would be a 5 here, and that's an A, same here, and lastly, same here. Okay. Then we go up to a high D note. Don't worry what these little black marks are for the moment. I'll explain that in just a second. We go up to a high D note, and I'm going to get you to keep your first finger in use for this one, rather than using what you'd imagine would be more appropriate, like your forefinger. We're going to use our first finger to play the 5th fret of the A string, which gives us a high D note. That's a whole octave up from this D note. So what note is a third below a D note? 1, 2, 3, because we count the note we start on. 1, 2, 3. A third below a D note is a B flat. And we can't play this D and this B flat at the same time. So we have to find a B flat on the E string. Now we've just been playing the 5th fret of the E string as an A note. Hear that the same? So if we know that B flat in a chromatic scale, if you think back to our earlier lessons, B flat can also be thought of as A sharp. That's one note and 1 fret higher up than A in the chromatic scale, right? So if that's A at the 5th fret, B flat must be 6, the next fret up. So when we play that D note here, we pair it up with the 6th fret of the E string. That gives us B flat and a D. Okay, so that will look like this. Okay. Then we have a B flat here. A B flat below, a third below a B flat is a G. In fact, we've already done it up here, and we can play a G at the 3rd fret of the E string. So that one's simple. And then the A we've done before. A third below an A is an F, 1st fret of the E string, so we can write that in as well. And by golly, apart from 2 notes, we're pretty much there. Let's have a look at how to play this measure, these 2 measures, because it's a little bit fiddly. I'll talk you through it. So let's think about finger positions for these 2-part harmony parts first. I'm going to drop my uke down here so you can still see the whiteboard, but keep yours at a 45-degree angle for comfort and playability, if you can. So first off, we've got 3 on the A string, that's a C, and 5 on the E string, that's an A. Now, the way I like to do it is using my first and third fingers like so. I find if I use those two fingers, it's a bit of a stretch. First and third fingers really comfortable. Play both of those at the same time, which is a really nice two-part harmony. Next up, we have 5 and 6. So we're going to slide this finger up to the 5th fret. Now, you've got two options here because it's not the same shape, is it? Notice those are 2 apart. When we come up here, they're only 1 apart, sorry there. So you've got two options. When we move from this 5 and 3, you can either squeeze those two fingers together, which I find easiest actually, because you don't then have to move them up from the strings. Or if it's more comfortable, you can play 5 and 3 here and introduce that index finger for the 6 there. Okay, so 5 and 3, 6 and 5. Okay. Next up, we go back to the 5 and 3, so we come back down. The next one's nice because we've got 3 and 1, so we just drag that whole shape back for a G and B flat. Then we go to 1 and 0. I just move that index finger up. And then I can keep it where it is for 0 and 1 on the C and E strings. So in slow motion, if I play this measure here, it will look something like this. Just before we do it, just a quick word about note lengths here. Remember I said all of these notes are a crotchet or one beat, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, just like an earlier piece we did last week, we've got these little marks here, these little black marks, which mean they're quavers or eighth notes. That just means you play them twice as quick. So we can think of this as quick, 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 slow, slow. Or 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Again, don't sweat it. Just know that these first 4 notes, we play them twice as quick as every other note in the piece. Okay, so that will sound like this. These ones are longer. Quick, 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 slow, slow. Okay. Let's give it a go after 4. 2, 3, 4. And again. Okay. Might take a bit of practice to play that round. Let's try it a little bit slower. 2 and 3 and 4 and... again. There we go. Not too bad, is it? With a bit of practice, you'll get that down perfectly. Notice we've got that lovely 2-part harmony coming through. Let's look at one last bit just to finish this whole thing off. Now with these C's at the end, I like to do a similar thing that I did with the F's. I don't like to play a third below them. I'll explain why, but I don't want you to sweat this again. Just kind of soak this in because I think it's interesting and I'll introduce a new musical term, but don't sweat it too much, just do your best. Now, it's all to do with something called a perfect cadence. What's a cadence? A cadence just means the end of a piece of music or the end of a phrase. So if I was to strum the end of this song, it would go like this. The chords are F, but these are the most important two, the two that finish it, C to F, C to F. So a cadence just means the last bit of a phrase. A perfect cadence just means that we go from the 5th chord in the scale, C, to the 1 chord in the scale at F. The reason it's called a perfect cadence, and this is just a musical term, the interval from 1 to 5, we call it a perfect 5th. So a perfect cadence is any song that goes from the 5th chord to the 1st chord. And it's like that perfect finish, isn't it? Quite often you'll be playing a piece of music and you'll hear someone do something like to finish it off, and that's a similar thing, 1, 5, 1, C, G, 7, C. But in this case, C to F. Now that perfect cadence is a really strong part of this song. We really want that resolution of, it's the ding dang dung, isn't it, if you're singing ding dang dung, ding dang dung. So it's really important that not only do we have a feel of an F chord on these, we need the feel of a C chord on these, because that's what we'd be strumming if we're strumming it. Now, if I play a third below a C, that would be an A. And an A and a C don't sound quite right there. And that's because the A suggests like an A minor type sound. It doesn't sound like a C chord, right? So just like we did with the F chord, where we played the note that is a 5 above it in the scale, F, C, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take a C and we're going to play the note that's 5 above it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to put a G note here. Okay. Again, don't sweat this. You can just play it and just experiment yourself and see what sounds good to your ears. Some people would just play a third below the whole way through this and it would sound nice. It would give it another feel. But I like the sound of that perfect cadence at the end, so that's why I've done it. So these are now G's. And let's put in these C's as well that I missed here. Okay. So this piece in the song, this part of the song rather, is really, really easy peasy, because we have C and F, 0, 1 on the middle 2 strings. Then we can leave that finger on the F if we want to, and just play the top 2 strings open. Top 2 nearest your nose, I mean. And then we go back to this 0 and 1 on the middle 2 strings. So we don't even have to move this finger for this last bit. We just go, let's move it out the way so you can see. Ding, dang, dong, ding, dang, dong. Now, just before we play the whole piece, this C and G note throws up an interesting kind of conundrum for high G players. When we play those 2 notes together, G and C, the G note is a higher note on a normal reentrant high G tuning. To the C note, it's higher, isn't it? High, low. It's almost like we're playing it from the scale above the one we're playing in. That's okay, that's like an inversion of G, it's absolutely fine, it sounds okay. It works, it harmonises, but you lose the sense of the melody going, because our ear hears that G more than it does the C. So high G players, there's a couple of things that you can do to help that. First is to keep the notes exactly the same as we've done here, but just try and very lightly hit that G string, so you dig in a bit harder on the C string. So that measure will sound something like this. Notice you still hear it, but I'm concentrating, pushing a little bit harder as I pass the C string. That can be a bit tricky. Another thing you could do to really simplify it is just play a C note and do away with the harmony part there. So we would have 0, 1, just the C on its own, and 0, 1 again. Okay, so a couple of options there. That's the benefit sometimes of having a low G. And again, there's benefits and drawbacks to each tuning really, high G and low G. If we play that with low G, we have that nice low G note, which is lower than a C, so it feels more satisfying to our ears. So sometimes playing in low G can really help you with pieces like this, but there's always a ways and a means to get around it. So let's give it a go. We're going to put the whole thing together now, and hopefully you'll hear that lovely sound of a 2-part harmony. I'm going to play this through twice. The first time, I'm not going to keep to a tempo or perhaps even a rhythm. I'm just going to literally play one part at a time and talk you through what I'm doing so you can kind of learn it with me. The second time I'll play it at a kind of standard but slowish tempo, and we can play it in time so you can really hear how it sounds and practice along. I'm going to keep my uke down here as much as possible so it doesn't interfere with the music, but I would recommend printing off the printable PDF version if you can. This is probably quite hard to follow on a small screen, but you might get away with it. So let's have a try then, just talking you through it. So let's start with that 0 and 1 on the middle two strings for C and F. Move that index finger up and add your second finger down for 4 and 3. 1 and 0 on the E and A string, and then keep your finger where it is and the middle two strings. Let's do that again. Keep your finger there, 0, 1, 4, 3, 1 and 0 on the strings nearest the floor, and back to the middle two strings. The next measure starts with your finger where it is, 1 and 0 on the bottom two strings. Up to 3 and 1 now, using your third and first fingers. Take that shape up to 5 and 3. And we do the same on the next measure, F and A, 1 and 0. G and B flat, 3 and 1. A and C, 5 and 3. Then we're going to start the next measure where we are, 5 and 3. And then either introduce your second finger on the 6th fret of the E string. Come back. Down, 1 and 0, and middle two strings. Or this time round, I'll show you the other way, 5 and 3 again. The alternative, to squish those two together, 6 and 5. Back down again, 1 and 0, middle two strings. And then to finish off, middle two strings where you are. Dig in on the C string if you can, and then we do 0, 1 again. 0, 1, dig in on that C string, top two open, back to 0 and 1. There we go. Okay, let's have a go at playing it in time now. Remember, all of the notes are the same length apart from this bit, which is quick, 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 slow, slow. Okay, other than that, all the same note length. Join in with me after 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Fantastic. Well done, everyone. So what I'd really like to do is for you to see that as just the starting point. I think a really great exercise would be to find a very simple melody. You could either work one out yourself or compose one yourself, or take something really simple like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or find one in a book like Oh When the Saints Go Marching In, something really simple and gentle, and then see if you can write your own two-part harmony. Remember, all we need to do is take the original melody, make sure you've worked out that first, and then if in doubt, make your harmony a third below, because that way you'll still hear that melody coming out really nice and true. See if you can work that out just by counting back. It really helps to write the scale out, a bit like I did with the F major scale to start with, just so you can see which note is a third back. Remember to count from the note that you start on, including it when you count back. 1, 2, 3. And then just play through the whole thing, make sure it's working really well. If you get to a couple of notes as a harmony that don't sound quite right, think, am I on the tonic chord? Am I on the 1 chord from the piece? If I am, perhaps use another note from that chord rather than the third below. Have an experiment. And sometimes what might sound nice to your ear doesn't sound nice to someone else's, and what doesn't sound nice to them sounds nice to you. So have a bit of an experiment. And I think this is a really nice way to add another layer of sophistication and another option to your playing. So it doesn't always have to be chords or melody or chord melody. This is almost like a middle way where you can create it yourself. And also you can use it in the middle of a chord melody. You could put some two-part harmony to add a bit of variety. It's a really nice way of using it.